This video is part 2 of the Jeopardy prophecy video that is predicting the precise date that James Earl Jones will die on November 4th, 2021, followed by the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash that will be caused by a bird strike on January 14th, 2022. It is necessary that you watch part 1 before you watch part 2, and a link to part 1 is in the description box below this video. Earlier it was explained how there was a 2 times 8 days connection between the day Trump trumpeted the stock market on the same day that Pennsylvania Governor Wolf certified the controversial election results, and the 8th of November, the day Alex Trebek died at the age of 80 after having hosted 8,000 episodes of the show Jeopardy, and the day that the Pittsburgh Steelers won their football game to go 8-0 on the season, which, as explained, connected with the most controversial Super Bowl in all of history, with exactly 7 times 110 weeks, and this 8th of November date connected with exactly 110 weeks to the controversial Pennsylvania gubernatorial debate that Alex Trebek moderated. It was explained how this 2 times 8 days connection from this 8th of November symbolizes the numeric value of the name Jesus, 888, but also symbolizes double jeopardy. What confirms this double jeopardy connection is that on this same day, this 8th of November, that includes this Pittsburgh Steelers football sign, was the day that the football kicker that God uses, named Harrison Butker for the Kansas City Chiefs, kicked a second double doink. In football, it is quite rare for the football to hit the upright goalpost. When the ball hits it twice, it is called a double doink, and it is extremely rare. This kicker named Harrison kicked 2 double doinks, which gives us 2 witnesses confirming the matter, just as the Bible says is required. In fact, one of the most famous incidents in playoff football history is when the Chicago Bears lost the game in the final seconds when the Bears kicker attempted to win the game with a field goal and kicked a double doink. An exact and very prophetic 50 weeks later, this Harrison Butker kicker kicked a double doink. And both double doinks were kicked in the city of Chicago, a city from which a famous politician is from, and also the city in which the actor Harrison Ford was born. But on the 8th of November, this Harrison Butker kicked another double doink, and this double doink hinted at the double jeopardy 2 times 8 days connection from the 8th of November. God uses this Harrison Butker kicker to point to the actor Harrison Ford, the actor that played Han Solo in the movie Star Wars, the same movie in which James Earl Jones was the voice of Darth Vader. It is a coincidence that Harrison Ford is known for his aviation hobby, and his career is filled with acting roles of him as a pilot, including in the movie 7 Nights, 6 Days, in which Harrison Ford himself flies the plane in the scenes in the movie, and the plot of this movie involves a plane crash, and the name of Harrison Ford's character is Harris. God has used Harrison Ford's aviation mishaps to point to this upcoming infamous plane crash, a plane crash that could result in the death of a famous Indian American from California that might have a name that is similar to Harrison Ford and Harrison Butker, a plane crash that will lead to the Antichrist coming to power, and it could be that this rise of this Antichrist to power will be a double doink. It could be a double jeopardy. This Antichrist could have already been in power and will come to power a second time. It is interesting that had this extra point not been missed with this double doink, the score in this game would have added up to 44. The football team that Harrison Butker played against in this game was the Carolina Panthers, and the must-watch video number 9 and video number 10 on this channel explain how the Panthers reveal the identity of the Antichrist from Bible prophecy. In the Bible, the number 500 in the Greek New Testament, Strong's G500, is the word for Antichrist. What is interesting is that this second double doink, kicked by Harrison Butker on this 8th of November with these signs of eights on this day, was a double jeopardy 2 times 8 days to the day that Trump trumpeted the stock market and Pennsylvania Governor Wolf certified the controversial election results. The number 500 symbolizes the Antichrist because the 500th word in the Greek New Testament, Strong's G500, is the word for Antichrist. And this day, in turn, is exactly 500 days after the Manhattan Blackout and Harrison Ford's 77th birthday, who was born in 1942, and his Star Wars career spans 42 years from 1977 to the year of the Manhattan Blackout in 2019. In Bible prophecy, the number 42 symbolizes the Antichrist, as it is said that the Antichrist will rule for 42 months. And in the Manhattan Blackout, it was initially reported 42,000 customers without power, later increased to 72,000, and the blackout occurred from 42nd Street to 72nd Street, the area known as Hell's Kitchen. On the day of the Manhattan Blackout, Harrison Ford turned 77 years old, who was born in 1942. His Star Wars career spans 42 years, and the Manhattan Blackout occurred an exact 110 minutes shy of an exact 42 years after the infamous New York City blackout in 1977. In which 9 million people were without power for just over 24 hours, which hints at the 9 earthquakes in the 24-hour period sign, and 9 million people paired with 110 minutes shy of an exact 42 years is a pairing of 9 and 110 that hints at 9/11, and the New York City blackout in 1977 was an exact prophetic 50 days after the day the movie Star Wars was released in theaters, which stars James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader and Harrison Ford as Han Solo, a pilot of the Millennium Falcon, and Falcon is symbolizing the bird strike that will cause Kamala Harris's plane to crash. And so the release of the movie Star Wars in 1977 connects with the infamous New York City blackout, which connects with the Manhattan blackout and Harrison Ford's birthday, which connects with 500 days to Trump trumpeting the stock market and Pennsylvania Governor Wolf certifying the controversial election results, which connects with the double jeopardy 2 times 8 days to the double doink of Harrison, as in Kamala Harris, Butker, on the 8th of November on the day of the Eights signs. And what is also interesting is that exactly 18 weeks after the double doink of Harrison Butker on the day that Alex Trebek died was the day of the sign of the retirement announcement of the NFL's passing king, New Orleans Saints Drew Brees, who was known for having won Super Bowl 44. 18 weeks is 6 plus 6 plus 6 weeks, which is Antichrist symbolism. And speaking of a connection of 3 sets of 6 weeks, in the Bible, Joshua led the Hebrews around the walls of security of the ancient city of Jericho 7 times over 7 days, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets before the walls collapsed in judgment. This was a 3 sets of 7, and from the day that President Trump, God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet his signs, trumpeted how the Dow had reached 30,000 for the first time, which hinted at the 30,000-foot level in aviation. It is exactly 3 sets of 7 weeks to the day that Kamala Harris was in High Point, North Carolina, visiting an electric bus manufacturer, which was Satan falling like lightning from heaven symbolism, and pointed to the day that Kamala Harris will fall from the sky in a plane crash that will lead to the rise of the Antichrist. In High Point, Harris promoted her and Biden's $2.3 trillion jobs and infrastructure package. 2.3 trillion hints at the number 23. God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together to confirm the signs and connections and to point to Barack Obama, as has been explained many other times in other videos, which was why April 19th was exactly 9 years after Joe Biden made an emergency landing in his Air Force Two in California, where Harris is from, after a bird strike. And this is also why it is 3 sets of 90 days after her visit to High Point at the Electric Bus Company, where she promoted $2.3 trillion, to the day that she will die in a plane crash due to a bird strike. 2.3 trillion and 3 sets of 90 days is another pairing of 9 and 23 that confirm the signs and connections. And another confirmation of this is the plane crash that occurred 90 days after her visit to High Point. And speaking of this other double doink by this kicker Harrison Butker, that was kicked in Chicago, the city from which a famous politician is from, that will become president a second time, a double doink, as a result of the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. This famous politician is also famous for having worn jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school, the basketball president. And this double doink that was kicked in Chicago was kicked from the 23-yard line with the score at 23 for the Chiefs. And the basketball president that wore jersey number 23 that is from Chicago will serve non-consecutive terms, just like President Grover Cleveland served non-consecutive terms, having skipped the 23rd presidency of Benjamin Harrison. And this double doink that was kicked in Chicago by Harrison Butker was exactly 23 weeks after the Manhattan blackout, which contained prophetic signs involving Harrison Ford. And the Manhattan blackout and these Harrison Ford signs were in turn exactly 23 weeks after the prophetic Super Bowl on the date 2-3, which hints at the number 23, in 2019, in which the big Amazon commercial starred Harrison Ford as himself and involved a nationwide and global blackout power outage that hinted at its cause originating from outer space, which hints at the upcoming solar flare storm from the sun that will hit Earth, which will be catastrophic and cause major earthquakes and the eruption of Yellowstone volcano. And during the Manhattan blackout occurred an event named Manhattan Henge, a rare event that occurs on only 2 days every year, in which the sun sets perfectly between the skyscraper canyon walls of Manhattan, which, by the way, was apparently best seen from 42nd Street, the boundary edge of the blackout area of Hell's Kitchen. And Harrison Ford's Star Wars career spans 42 years, and it was the 42nd anniversary of the New York City blackout. And Genesis 1:14 tells us that the lights in the sky are for signs. And so this Manhattan power outage blackout that occurred during the time of Manhattan Henge was more confirmation of this upcoming power outage blackout that will be caused by the sun during solar cycle 25, which hints at the 25th Amendment, which will be used just prior to this solar storm to bring the Antichrist to power after Kamala Harris dies in a plane crash, through appointing the Antichrist to the office of Vice President and then President. And also coronavirus hints at this upcoming solar storm that will emanate from the surface of the sun, which is called the corona. And also on this day of this Super Bowl was a prophetic sign involving Kamala Harris and a plane crash, which is explained in other videos. Kamala Harris, the senator from California, tweeted about this plane crash on this day of this Super Bowl. And this plane crash occurred in Yorba Linda, California, the location of the home of Richard Nixon and the museum, the Presidential Library of Richard Nixon, who is known for having used the 25th Amendment to appoint his vice president, which replaced him. And so therefore God was using this to point to the 25th Amendment, which will replace Kamala Harris. And this sign involving Kamala Harris occurred on the day of this Amazon commercial involving Harrison Ford. And Harrison Ford is known for his aviation mishaps and crashes. And this prophetic Super Bowl on this date 2-3, which hints at the number 23, was nicknamed the GOAT versus Rams Super Bowl, Tom Brady being the greatest of all time, GOAT being Antichrist symbolism. And in the book of Daniel chapter 8 in the Bible, it describes a battle between a goat and a ram, and also a period of time of 23 100 days that regards the timing of the Antichrist, and this goat versus ram Super Bowl on the date 2-3, which hints at the number 23 and also contained other signs involving the number 23, was exactly 2,300 days after the 23rd anniversary of the 1989 World Series earthquake in the San Francisco Bay Area. And on this 23rd anniversary, a massive fireball flew at low altitude over the San Francisco Bay Area and was a national news story. It was another lights in the sky sign that confirmed the signs. And God uses the city of San Francisco to point to the first Antichrist, Pope Francis, from whom the second Antichrist, whose number is 23, will get his power. And the big coincidence of the 1989 World Series earthquake, which in fact wasn't a coincidence and was designed by God, is that the two teams that were playing in the World Series at the time of the World Series earthquake just happened to be the two baseball teams from the San Francisco Bay Area, San Francisco and Oakland, two cities that are connected to with the Bay Bridge, which infamously collapsed in the World Series earthquake. The bridge symbolizing the cross, which is the bridge between man and God. And that's why the epicenter of the 1989 World Series earthquake occurred 10 miles outside of Santa Cruz, California, and in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And Santa Cruz means Holy Cross. The big coincidence of the Super Bowl on the date 2-3 in 2019 is that it was played in a stadium named Mercedes-Benz and was exactly 6 years after the date 2-3 in 2013 and the Super Bowl that was played in a stadium named Mercedes-Benz. And the big coincidence in that Super Bowl is that the two head coaches of the two NFL teams in this game were brothers, the Harbaugh brothers, which hinted at the coincidence of the two teams in the 1989 World Series. And so the Super Bowl was nicknamed the Harbaugh Bowl before it became named the Blackout Bowl, because this Super Bowl is known for the power outage blackout that occurred in the stadium during the game. And the team playing in this game was the San Francisco 49ers. Just days before lightning struck twice the Vatican on the day that Pope Benedict resigned, which was just days before Pope Francis became Pope on the date 3/13 in 2013, and the score in the Antichrist Goat versus Ram Super Bowl in 2019 was 3-13, exactly 6 years after this Super Bowl in 2013, involving the San Francisco, as in Pope Francis, 49ers, led by the quarterback, the founder of the Spirit of Antichrist cultural Marxist protests that called for kneeling for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, which not coincidentally was the time that the first plane struck the first tower at 8:46 a.m. on 9/11. God has used Colin Kaepernick, one of 7 men named Nick that God uses to point to the Nicolaitan doctrine and works of the American Evangelical Church of Laodicea, which is Calvinism and free grace, otherwise known as easy believism and properly known as antinomianism, and their offspring doctrines of once saved, always saved, the myth of imputed righteousness, our righteousness is as filthy rags, one verse that's taken out of context, misunderstood, and flatly contradicts many other passages in the Bible. All Christians will be raptured, and no lordship salvation. And what could be called happy Christianity or practical Christianity, where coming to Jesus is seen more as a life improvement than a need for a savior from sin. And what is perhaps the worst and most unfortunate doctrine of all of them, the doctrine of predestination and election, which to them says that people are predestined to go to heaven or hell before they are even born. In the book of Revelation chapter 2, Jesus said that he hates this Nicolaitan doctrine and works, and that he is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those whose works are a result of this Nicolaitan doctrine and on those who teach this Nicolaitan doctrine. To learn how God has clearly communicated through his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day are the doctrines that I just listed, watch the other videos on this channel. And also importantly, watch the videos on other channels that I will link to in the description box below. Doctrine is very important. One of the biggest problems within evangelical culture is anti-intellectualism, which says that one's ignorance is equal to another person's knowledge. But the prophet Hosea wrote in chapter 6, verse 4, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge." But the point being is that this blackout bowl connects with this Super Bowl that's hinting at the power outage through the Amazon commercial that stars Harrison Ford, which in turn was exactly 23 weeks before the Manhattan blackout, which, by the way, was the same day as the blackout caused by Hurricane Barry, which hinted at a president who changed his name from Barry to another name that begins with the letter B, and again was the 77th birthday of Harrison Ford, which was 23 weeks exactly before the double doink by Harrison Butker. And the other double doink Harrison Butker kicked was the day that Alex Trebek died, the host of Jeopardy, which symbolizes the judgment destruction that is about to befall the nation. The same day as Harrison Butker's prophetic double doink was the day of the extremely prophetic Philadelphia-Dallas Cowboys sign that was when the Cowboys were stranded and left behind in Philadelphia. And this sign is explained in other videos, but this was a judgment warning sign for the church that is about to be left behind, that has its doctrine, which has its Nicolaitan doctrine, the home of which is Dallas. And this Dallas stranded left behind sign on the day of the double doink was exactly 50 weeks, which symbolizes the church, because 50 symbolizes the church because of Pentecost, which means 50th day. And the Feast of Pentecost is also known as the Feast of Weeks. And that's why 50 weeks connections. It was exactly 50 weeks after the infamous double doink in the Chicago Bears Philadelphia playoff game involving Nick Foles, player number 9 for Philadelphia, which was another judgment warning for the church. Philadelphia being the only church mentioned in the book of Revelation in Jesus' 7 letters that would be spared and raptured, spared the tribulation. And that double doink came with 9 seconds left in the game, which paired with the 23s in the other double doink from the 23-yard line at the score with 23, which confirms the signs and connections. And this double doink was exactly 70 weeks being the most central prophecy in the Bible, to the day that the double rainbow guy died. And of course, God is using Nick Foles, player number 9. 9 symbolizes judgment, as judgment warning for the American Evangelical Church for its Nicolaitan doctrine and works. Once this prediction has come to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video on this channel and read the homepage of the website TrumpPrediction.com or HarrisCrashPrediction.com. Time is running out, and if for some reason you don't have enough time to watch all of the videos on this channel, I will leave a list of the most important videos in the description box below this video or on the homepage of the website. In terms of God's prophetic signs and knowing what God is doing, after having watched this video, you are now one of the most informed people on the planet. The question is, what will you now do with this information? And how many people will you help get this video to? Keep on posting the link to this video everywhere in social media. And if you would like the PDF file for the flyer I hand out on busy street corners, place on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put in mailboxes, please contact me at darrenjacksinbox@gmail.com. In my opinion, every single believer, unless they have a health condition, should be doing something like this in the streets every day. Also, everyone should have some of these flyers in their pockets, handing them out as they go about their daily business, when they walk from their car into the bank or to the grocery store. As they walk up and down the aisles of the grocery store, hand them out to people. I personally don't know what someone is thinking if they are not doing this. And if someone thinks that they are too shy to do this, what I have to say is get over it. Courage isn't a lack of fear. It is action in spite of it. And God wants us to be courageous for him. Ezekiel 33:6. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, so that the people are not warned, and the sword comes and takes any of them, that person is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at the watchman's hand. Revelation 12:8. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, and in this case faithless implies a doing action, the detestable. As for the murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. In other words, this is a warning to be courageous and not cowardly or lazy. I personally believe that the flyer that I hand out is absolutely what is needed right now. But if it isn't my flyer, everyone should be handing out something as they go about their daily business. I personally believe that everyone has 20 minutes to an hour a day at least to be handing out flyers in these last days. But if you for some reason don't think that you do, you can be handing them out as you go about your daily business. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. There is absolutely no New Age or collective consciousness type of explanation for how these predictions were known ahead of time. They were known ahead of time through Bible prophecy and watching for God's prophetic signs. Jesus was not just another supposed enlightened master like the supposedly enlightened Buddha. Jesus was God incarnate, and he is the only way to eternal life and to God the Father. Jesus died for you. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. The purpose of the predictions in this video, the reason for God giving me a voice through these predictions in this video that will come to pass, is to prove the following things. The God of the Bible and Israel is the true God. God has a son, and he died for everyone. Everyone can be saved if they repent of sin and put their trust in him. That what is being explained on this channel is God's true big picture of signs. That the other assertions in this video are true, including that the doctrine of imminence, that we cannot know the precise day of his return, is false. That the doctrine that we cannot know right now the identity of the Antichrist is false. The VACCINEs are a spiritual abomination. The VACCINE is the mark of the Antichrist. It is not a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. The VACCINE is part of a transformative process that is leading to demonic possession. As Bible prophecy says, those that take the mark of the Antichrist are going to hell. The reason God has given me a voice through this prediction is to absolutely prove that the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a result of this false doctrine, which is a false gospel and doctrine straight from the pits of hell, is sovereign grace, commonly known as irresistible grace, which comes in the package called Calvinism, and what is called free grace, commonly referred to as unconditional grace, sometimes referred to as easy believism or cheap grace. It comes in a package called dispensationalism. Sovereign grace and free grace both come to the heretical conclusion of once saved, always saved. No one is saved past tense. No one is saved until they get to heaven, and one must remain in the faith while they are here on earth, which includes taking action. Sovereign grace and free grace can be properly referred to as antinomianism, a word rooted in Latin meaning against law. This heretical theology produces other related heretical doctrine. That is also the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth, such as no lordship salvation, which is the opposite of what the followers of no lordship salvation disparagingly call lordship salvation, the doctrine of predestination of the elect, that people are predestined before birth to go to heaven or hell. This doctrine that is straight from the pits of hell, which has its origin through Calvin and Luther and Augustine in the Gnostics, which John in his letters called Antichrist. Watch the links to videos in the description box below that refute the passages that these people claim support this doctrine of predestination of the elect. Once saved, always saved also known as eternal security, the myth of imputed righteousness, our righteousness is as filthy rags, a verse that Martin Luther isolated to develop his unfortunate theology, and the doctrine that all Christians will be raptured. Through God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, God has indisputably pointed to and identified these Nicolaitan doctrines. He has pointed to sovereign grace and free grace specifically. And again, the purpose for this prediction and the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove this. When this prediction comes to pass, it will prove everything that I have just said. The majority of Christianity follows these doctrines. It is also the reason why the majority of Christianity is not able to recognize the mark of the Antichrist, and why they are presently in the process of taking the mark of the Antichrist. It is judgment on the church. The lukewarm church of Laodicea that has lost its saltiness and is no longer good for anything except to be trampled under the feet of men. Had the mark been completely obvious to every Christian, it would have defeated this purpose of deceiving those that have lost their saltiness. The dispensational belief in a supposed distinction between supposed church-age saints and tribulation saints is a product of their false Nicolaitan doctrine of free grace or unconditional grace. This false belief in supposed church-age saints and tribulation saints is wicked deception, and it is one reason why the followers of this doctrine are deceived into believing that the VACCINE, as it is right now in its current form, is not the mark of the Antichrist, and is instead a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. In other words, they do not have the spiritual eyes to perceive the truth because it is judgment on them for this doctrine. The ongoing argument between, on the one side, sovereign grace Calvinists and free grace dispensationalists, and those that don't have a systematic theology, a systematic way of interpreting the Bible, non-Calvinists and non-dispensationalists, that believe we have a free will, not some sort of unnecessary paradox between predeterminism and a free will, but a genuine, sincere free will, is very real. Each side believes the other side is very gravely and dangerously wrong, and therefore one side is in fact very gravely and dangerously wrong. The prediction in this video proves that God has demonstrated with which side he is very angry and which is gravely and dangerously wrong. That said, however, there was no excuse for people that follow sovereign grace and free grace theology and have the works that are a result of this theology, because all one needed to do was not ignore the countless passages that contradict their theology and read the Bible as a whole instead of isolating passages in order to proof text their position. Doctrine is important. One of the problems within evangelical culture is anti-intellectualism, which says that one's ignorance is equal to another one's knowledge. Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I reject you from being a priest to me. Make sure you watch the videos that I will link to in the description box below regarding doctrine. Learn what the early church fathers believed and how it does not comport with what Christians believe today, and how they would see what Christians believe today as being heresy. Learn what the early church fathers believed before the Western church was corrupted by Augustine in the 5th century, when he joined the Catholic Church after being an official auditor in the Gnostic Manichaean sect for 9 years. After this prediction has come to pass, and the warning I am making here, I don't know what in the world someone is thinking if they choose to not watch all of the videos in the description box regarding doctrine. Also visit the website predictionsproveit.com. The problem within the church is that Christians don't really fear God. The root of this problem of a lack of fear of God is bad theology and doctrine. There is one key verse in the Bible that is essential for understanding the Bible, which speaks to the primary importance of fear of God. Genesis 22:12. He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Prior to this, God did not know that Abraham feared him, and Abraham had not demonstrated his faith. This was after God had accounted Abraham righteous for believing. James 2:17. Faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. James said this in context of two examples that he provided, which was how Rahab and Abraham demonstrated their faith through their actions. And this type of demonstration of faith that God is looking for typically involves risk and sacrifice. It is going to cost something. As Jesus said, one needs to become like a kernel of wheat and die and go into the ground before it can produce fruit. This death of the self before being born again costs something, and ultimately one's demonstration of faith for truth and righteousness could theoretically, literally cost someone their life. God is looking for those that fear him. It is the rare individual that fears God more than man. It is the rare individual that is willing to demonstrate his faith and fear of God and stand up for truth and righteousness. The mark of the Antichrist is beautifully designed to elicit this demonstration of faith. For example, any Christian that took the VACCINE mark of the Antichrist, knowing that fetal stem cells were used in its development, does not fear God. Also, everyone should know by now that the masks are a lie. The size of the virus is 1 micron, and no mask filters below 3 microns. Even medical masks don't prevent the virus. These masks are like trying to keep mosquitoes out of one's backyard through using a chain link fence. This is why before it became political, every single Western country, as part of their protocol for a possible pandemic, included not recommending masks for the population, which is why even Fauci recommended not wearing masks at the beginning of COVID. For those with spiritual eyes to see, it is clear that wearing the masks is for the purpose of virtue signaling that you are a member of the COVID cult, and ultimately they demonstrate spiritual allegiance to Satan. The masks are for identifying the enemy and waging political and spiritual war on conservatives and Christians. If there is a supposed precursor to the VACCINE, it is definitely masks. No Christian should be wearing masks unless it is absolutely necessary, like boarding an airplane. And Christians should not be participating in religious worship inside a church with other people wearing masks. These people are deceived, period. It doesn't matter. They are deceived. They might be nice people. They might seem like Christians, but if they are wearing masks and social distancing inside a church, they don't get it, and they are part of the COVID cult, which is about spiritual allegiance to Satan. Most people believe that the Nicolaitan works Jesus referred to was gross, blatant sinning, and that the Nicolaitan doctrine is somehow the perverse doctrine in, quote, those other churches, unquote, but certainly not in their church. This is absolutely not true. God's big picture of signs has undeniably communicated that the Nicolaitan doctrine is what I have outlined here, and the vast majority of Christianity follows this doctrine. An example of Nicolaitan works and someone that does not fear God is someone that is not handing out flyers. This Nicolaitan works is expressed, for example, with someone that has been hypnotized by the political cult of COVID and is wearing masks. And wearing a mask in a place of worship in church is an abomination. This Nicolaitan works is expressed with someone that is not speaking out against the evil that is overtaking the land, which includes, for example, speaking out against people in church wearing masks. Eric Metaxas is currently being blacklisted by the Sovereign Grace Calvinists for drawing the parallel between these faith alone doctrine Christians and the Christians in Nazi Germany. Metaxas has rightly claimed that the evangelical church is on the hook for and is responsible for the stolen election. Those supposed Christians that are idly standing by and not taking action and speaking out against the evil that is marching over the land are the Nicolaitans. They are the lazy, lukewarm, cowardly Christians, and they have lost their saltiness. They are no longer good for anything except to be trampled under the feet of men, which is why many of them are taking the VACCINE mark of the Antichrist, which is the inverse of the mark that was given in Ezekiel chapter 9 to those that were crying out for justice and righteousness. Contrary to the false doctrine of dispensationalism, which is the package in which free grace comes in, which says that there is supposedly a distinction between supposed church-age saints and tribulation saints, which, by the way, is a main reason why these evangelicals are not able to recognize the mark of the Antichrist, which is this VACCINE. It is judgment on these Christians from God for this free grace dispensationalism, church-age saints versus tribulation saints false doctrine. The truth is, the main purpose of the end times period is to test the faith of saints. And this test comes through the Antichrist and the persecution and the mark of the Antichrist. It is designed to compel these lukewarm Christians to finally stand up for truth and righteousness and demonstrate their faith through risk and sacrifice. And those that will be raptured, those that will be spared the tribulation, those that will be worthy to escape the things that are coming, as Jesus said to always pray for, will be those that have already passed the test of faith. They will be those that have already demonstrated their faith through risk and sacrifice. This is what I believe is the primary distinction between who will be spared the tribulation and who will not, given that the purpose of the tribulation is to test the faith of the saints. It is an act of God's love, because if we had not done so, having then gotten to the kingdom, we will have regretted it, not demonstrating our faith and doing more and taking a risk for Him and sacrificing for Him. And so those that have already been doing that do not need to go through the tribulation. And this, I believe, is what would constitute being worthy of escaping the things that are coming. Obviously, when these predictions come to pass, you will know that you should watch all of the videos on this channel, beginning with the videos that are linked to in the description box below this video. I strongly recommend not going through the videos on this channel in random fashion, selecting titles that may be interesting, but rather I strongly recommend following my recommendations that are listed in the description box below this video. This channel is not a daily or weekly update on the latest news. Rather, this channel is a library that has documented God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. Hopefully you at least found this introduction video to be interesting, and if so, please leave a like and upvote the video, and please consider sharing the video. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com, or PredictionsProveIt.com, and also check out the other information that I have linked to on the website. You should also pause this video right now and make a note of my other social media outlets. You never know when you will need them, and you might not be able to find them later. Also, if you want to download these videos as podcasts, I now have a podcast channel at Podbean, which is named Predictions Prove It.